Welcome back to Walking with Jesus Christ and the series on the use of money. I'm Jeff Gelineau, a Bible student, not a financial advisor. Our goal is to learn the mindset that the Bible teaches us about how we should use the money that God has given us. We learn that it's not our money. It really is God's. God gives it to us because He loves us and He wants to take care of us. Now, He doesn't give every person the same amount. It's not what we humans consider fair. Some people get a lot and don't work at all. Some people work very hard and only get a little. God promises that He will always provide for our needs, but that doesn't mean He's going to make us rich. Even if we're righteous, that doesn't guarantee riches. God mainly wants us to stop thinking about money so much. God wants us to fill our minds with holy things, with important things, with lofty things, with spiritual things. Now, one of the first benefits that comes from this proper perspective on money is that we start to become more generous. If we truly see that it's not our money, it's God's money that He's given us to provide for our needs, and if we have faith that He's going to continue to provide for us, then you start to feel a little less connected to the money and a little more willing to share it with others. Being generous with what we have is our next topic. So let's jump right into the topic by looking at what David says. David understood how God views money. Look what David says in Psalm 37, verse 21. The wicked borrows but does not pay back, but the righteous is generous and gives. I love this perfect contradiction between these two people. One person borrows from another and purposely decides not to repay that debt, hurting the other person, while someone else gives what he already has, what he's earned, to another person, helping them. God doesn't want us to be so focused on building up more and more wealth that we start to do ungodly things in order to do so. God wants us to be generous. Remember, it's not your money to begin with. Give some away to someone else who needs some help. Don't wait until you're forced to give. Give willingly, not by compulsion. Give freely. But that doesn't mean He wants us to show off by how generous and righteous we are. Look what Jesus says in Matthew 6, verses 1 through 4. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who's in heaven. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. Look at verse 3. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Now I know, I just made it harder. As if it wasn't already hard enough to be generous, now Christ wants to make sure we're doing it all for the right reasons. Christ wants to make sure that we aren't being generous just so that we can get recognition as being a generous person. Christ wants us to be discreet about how we deal with others. He says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Now, I think there's two benefits to Jesus' teaching here. Not only does it help us base our faith on God, who sees in secret, but also helps the person that we're giving to. Because, it's very hard to accept charity from others. So Christ wants us to be discreet and quiet when we reach out to give to others. God is a loving and generous God, and He's been teaching us to be the same as Him. And this message has continued from the beginning of time. The law of God that Moses shared with the people of Israel also spoke about generosity. We read in Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 7 to 8, if any among you, one of your brothers, should become poor in any of your towns within your land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother. But you shall open your hand to him and lend him sufficient for his need, whatever it may be. I think we can get some good advice from this Old Testament law to apply to our lives today as well. Don't harden your heart. Don't shut your hand. If you come across someone who needs help, don't convince yourself that they don't really need your help, that they're doing fine. Harden your heart is an old phrase that means you make yourself stop feeling friendly towards someone. You make yourself stop feeling kind toward them. When you harden your heart, you often try to remind yourself or convince yourself that they're responsible for their own actions. They probably made some bad decisions that got them where they are today. You don't need to help them. That's what hardening your heart means. Instead, Christ tells us to be generous. You don't have to judge people. Just be generous with them. There's a great parable that Jesus taught that includes both sides of this lesson. Let's take a look at it in Mark chapter 12, verses 41 to 44. And he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. The visuals in this story are amazing. Jesus and his disciples were walking along, and they got down to the part of the town where the temple was, and Jesus sat down for a bit, and he did some people watching. At this time, in this culture, they made public donations at the temple in the center of the town. And many rich people came and put large sums of money into the collection box. You can imagine the scene, right? Long, silky, colorful robes, immaculate hair, perfect makeup, great jewelry, and they come walking stately up to the front, making sure that everyone is watching. And there's no checkbooks or credit cards in those days. So you see them carrying heavy bags of gold coins up to the box. And you hear it as they drop heavy gold coin after heavy gold coin into the box. Thunk, thunk. And then up shuffles a poor old widow. Skinny, dusty, dirty, ragged old clothes. She's not an important person in anybody's eyes. She kind of quietly sneaks up there when no one is looking, hoping that no one will notice her. Tink, tink. She drops 2 half pennies into the box. So small and insignificant, you didn't even notice it. But Jesus notices. Look what he says in the next verse, Mark 12, verse 43 to 44. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, "Truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything that she had, all she had to live on." Being generous is not a factor of how much money you have. It's a factor of how much you want to obey God, how much you want to do what's good and what's right. Warren Buffett pledged to donate at his death $37 billion to the Gates Foundation, the largest donation ever recorded. Warren Buffett has $70 billion. He's giving away about half, and that's great. But the widow gave everything. Now, sure, she only gave away 1 penny, but that 1 penny was all that she had. What an incredible lesson for us. Now, I want to be clear. Jesus isn't asking you to give away all that you have to live on, like the widow did, but it's the attitude that Jesus wants us to learn. The spiritual mindset of realizing that this money we have is not ours anyways. It's God's. And what would please God more than for us to be generous with his money? Do you even have the love of God in you if you don't? Look what John wrote in 1 John 3, verse 17. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? That's a sobering thought for us to close with. In the next session in Walking with Jesus Christ, on the topic of the use of money, we're going to look at what the root of all evil really means. So find the session called The Love of Money, and we'll talk some more.